Hello everyone, this is Pi with SLRLounge.com. Now we are in the process of creating an entire training series specifically for SLR Lounge authors and writers to be able to create their own basically recordings, their own tutorials, edit them and post them online. But we've gotten so many questions from the community on how we're going about, capturing the screen and how we're creating these videos and editing them and posting them and all that kind of stuff that we thought, why not make this entire training series actually public and available for everybody? So in this training series, what we're going to do is we're going to go through, teach you guys how to set up Camtasia. That's what we use for our screen capture. We're going to go through a full edit of this image here in Lightroom, and then we're going to go into Camtasia, edit and produce that image. So this training series is kind of a twofer, guys. You guys are getting a Lightroom edit plus a Camtasia tutorial, all for the price of one. Well, actually, it's the price of none. That makes it a threefer because it's all free anyway. All right, so let's get started. What you see right now is you see my recording dialog box. It's already been pulled up, and you can see that I'm actually recording right now because, well, you can hear it. But what settings did we choose when we actually brought up this recording dialog? Now, I'm using Camtasia 8 right now to record, but we have Camtasia 7 as well. We bought Camtasia 7 when it first came out. We recently upgraded to Camtasia 8. And because there's kind of benefits and drawbacks to each, I always keep them both installed because I use, depending on what I'm doing, I'll use one or the other. And also it's great for tutorials like this where we need to actually screen capture the screen capture. All right, so let's go into our start menu right now. I'm going to hit Camtasia and we can see the different options I have. I have Recorder 8, Studio 8, and Recorder. This is version 7 and Studio version 7. Now the Studio side is basically where you're going to be doing your Camtasia editing of your captures, your screen captures. On the recording side, that's basically where we're going to do all of our recording. So I'm going to pull up Camtasia Recorder 7 so we see what that looks like. Now it gives me a little error right here, but that's just because I already have one pulled up. But we can still hit OK and it'll bring up the recording dialog box. So here's what the recording dialog box looks like when you first pull it up. And let's go through kind of the different options and settings that we have. We have, as far as select area, we can choose the area of our screen that we want to capture. Right now I have it set to full screen, and this is generally the setting that we use for basically Lightroom edits and Photoshop edits. And the reason why is because you want to be able to see the entire screen at once. There's so many things that we're doing. We're moving the mouse to one place, the other, and we want to be able to see the overall effects that we're creating. Hence, we're just choosing full screen. But if you guys are running in a smaller application window, or if there's only a certain portion of the window that you want to show, well, then you can click on Custom. And Custom will basically allow you to change the size and shape as well as the location of where you're recording. So you can kind of move it anywhere on the screen and record that specific area of your screen. But let's switch it back to full screen. Now, once I did that, it actually bumped the recorder onto my other screen. So let's pull it back. And we have some other options. So that's basically the options that we have as far as selecting the area we want to record. Now let's talk about the recorded inputs. So on the very left, we have webcam. Now with the webcam disabled, it's basically not going to record any video from our webcam. But, and I'm going to put on a hat because my hair is all messy. So let me find a hat. I'm going to grab this little trucker cap that I've got. And now I'm going to hit webcam on. There we go. You guys can see me. Ah, yeah, here we are in my studio. Let me record this, or pull this down actually. There we go. Actually, my hair wasn't too bad. Well, it's kind of crappy. Anyway, so with the webcam on, it's basically going to capture not only the audio and the screen capture, it's also going to capture your webcam. And you can basically have your image and your video playing in the corner of your videos, or you can switch back and forth between webcam video and your standard screen capture. For this computer, I only have the standard Asus laptop webcam available right now, and that's what it's showing. If I plug in my Logitech, it'll actually give me the option to choose a webcam here. Now for most of our Lightroom videos, I'm actually keeping webcam off, and I'd kind of recommend the same thing for everybody out there, especially for SLR Lounge authors. If you guys are doing basically a training video on, say, post-production or on Photoshop, having that video on is kind of distracting because it stays in the bottom left corner or wherever you want to put it. It's in the corner of the screen and you kind of just see it the whole time. It takes up space. And I feel like it's a rather distracting component of these tutorials, which is why I just generally keep it off for this kind of stuff. All right, now with the audio, I'm going to take off my hat now because I'm going to relax, guys. All right, so with audio, this is a really important side of basically your screen capture. You want to make sure that you're recording professional audio. If you click right here, we can see that we have different options for audio. We can choose different line ins, basically different inputs. So we have the M Audio Fast Track Pro input, and that's what I'm using right now on my mic. And we'll go over kind of our hardware in just a second. But we also have the standard microphone in the laptop. You have additional microphones. If you have, like, say, a USB headset plugged in, it'll give you that option as well. I also have this record system audio selected. If you choose this, what it's going to do is going to record any sounds that your Windows or your Mac operating system is creating on its own. So you recognized, or you guys probably noticed when we first pulled up this recording dialog box, is that it brought up a little error dialog and it gave us that Windows sound when it did that. You'll be able to hear that in the audio when we go back and do our editing, because it recorded that system sound. If we don't want to record system sound, you just turn it off right here by deselecting it, and it's not selected anymore. So basically you'll only record whatever you say into the mic. But the cool thing was, if you record system sound, you can choose in editing whether you want to keep it or not. So it's not like a big deal. If you do have it and you don't want it, you can delete it with just one click. Now, the main and important part of audio is setting the correct levels. Our levels dialog is right here, and you can see that if I'm adjusting it down, it's most likely it's getting a lot quieter, and then when I'm pulling it back up, you can hear it getting a lot louder. Now, the problem with this is that if you're adjusting your levels basically from this software every single time, well, from video to video and from each one of your tutorials to the next, it's going to vary in levels, in your audio level. If it's too high, it's going to be clipping. If it's too low, it's going to be too quiet, and regardless of how much someone turns it up on their system, they're still not going to be able to hear you. Plus, if it's somewhere in between, basically, that's where we're talking about, like, it's really impossible to remember where you put it. So what I'd recommend is just leave it always on max, and then adjust the levels on the actual device that you're recording from. So for us, we're recording from an M Audio Fast Track Pro, and so I'm physically adjusting the volume input on that device and just leaving this on max. That way, from video to video, it's always going to be the correct levels in my audio. It's going to be consistent regardless, okay? So I'd highly recommend doing that. If you don't have that option, then yes, you can adjust it. And where you want the audio to be falling is somewhere in between this middle range. Basically, you want it to not peak too far over the middle, because if it goes up too high, you're going to get clipping. Now, clipping is essentially where your input level is too high, and when the audio spikes, it kind of creates this static, really loud kind of buzzing, that's not great. It's not a good effect to have over your audio. It'll really irritate the viewer and whoever's listening to it. So just make sure that your audio isn't clipping, okay? So once we're done with this, we dialed in our correct settings, we're gonna hit record. Now at this point, this dialog box will go away, it'll drop down on the bottom of the screen, and then it's gonna look like this, where it basically gives you the duration, it's letting you monitor and view your audio, but it's gonna be off screen unless I click it. So I'm gonna close this little window right now, because we don't need it anymore. And so what happens is, as soon as you hit record, it just minimizes in your tray, so you basically don't see it. It gives you a little countdown, and you're ready to start recording whatever tutorial, whatever you want to create. Now, for this purpose of this tutorial, we're going to go through and do a little Lightroom edit. That way we actually have something to edit inside of Camtasia Studio in addition to just this video itself. So here's the twofer, guys. Here's the 2-for-1. All right, so I'm going to hit F twice to go full screen on this image. And when I shot this image, we took it out in Laguna Beach, and I basically shot it in several different ways. I did, a silhouette version of this image. I did a bright version of this image. I did a flash version of this image where I balanced the exposure. But what I wanted to do with this version was create this cool kind of negative space shot. And now that I'm looking at it, I really think it'd look great in black and white. So again, this is kind of the vision I'm having when I'm coming into this image right here. And let's get started producing it. So I'm going to hit D to go to my develop module. And, oh, actually, I'm already in the develop module, sorry. Out of habit, guys, this is habit. All right, so I'm gonna go into my mixology. We're gonna select this time the standard color vivid landscape preset. Now, generally, because we've done so many portrait edits, we're not selecting that specific preset, simply because, we're worried about kind of skin tones, but we're so far pulled back on this image that it's not really gonna matter. I mean, this is really an environmental portrait. There's such a small part of this overall landscape image. And by the way, guys, don't worry, we are going to go through the specific settings from basically over here on the right side after we dial in these preset settings. So those of you that don't have the preset system can still benefit as well. Okay, so let's close up the My Mixology. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to select my curve. I actually want to do a black and white, and I want it to be kind of faded, so I'm going to choose this black and white bright wash. It's going to brighten up the image a bit, fade it out, and now we're going to go into our base adjustments and just kind of make some tweaks here. So what I'm going to do first is dial up the exposure because I want to pull down the contrast, or I want to add contrast and also pull down the blacks. So let's go down to detail. I'm going to do a light boost to detail. With contrast, let's go and start with a medium boost, and then we'll add more if we need to. With blacks, I'm going to go and do a medium darken, and we can see that that pulls it down right away. And now I know that with my contrast, I want to go up a little bit higher. I want it to be kind of this black and white fade, but also to kind of have this pop to it, and that's why I'm adding this additional contrast. Now we're good as far as the rest of the settings go. We really don't need to make too many other adjustments here. What I'm going to do from here now is basically make adjustments to my overall image via graduated filters and brushes. Sorry, I can't talk right now. I'm doing too many things at once, guys. All right, so let's get started over here. So what I want to do first is select our graduated filters. And you know what, before I go on to that, before I forget, let's actually go through those adjustments that we did so those that don't have the preset system can know exactly what happened. So basically we started with raising up our exposure. Well, we didn't start with that, but we're raising up our exposure by 1 stop because we want to have an overall bright look and feel of the image. And we're boosting contrast to plus 75 because we don't want that just standard faded look. We want it to be kind of a poppy vintage look to it. So we're boosting up contrast, pulling down the highlights and the whites because we want to kind of flatten out the tones, pulling down the shadows and the blacks because we want to add additional contrast to the image. All right, now with presence, we're adding 30 clarity, and vibrance and saturation are a moot point because we have switched this to black and white toning and also added a nifty little tone curve. And this tone curve, you can see it's shifting up the black clipping. So we're clipping our blacks below a certain point, and that gives us that fade on the shadow side. We're also pulling up the overall exposure and then pulling down the whites. And so this gives us that kind of clipped loss in detail in the highlights. All right, so that's the tone curve. Let's go down to detail. I think that's the next adjustment that we have. We have our standard amount of sharpening applied. Sorry, that sound was me moving my leg on my desk and it made a big noise. All right, so sharpening is at 70, 1.5, 10, and 30. We're not using any noise reduction. This is just the standard sharpening that comes in with our standard import preset. And lens correction, we have our typical amount of lens correction for lens vignetting, which is just 30-30, which is keeping the tones from edge to edge equal brightness. That's it as far as the overall kind of image setup and everything. Now let's go through and finish all the kind of the rest of the image. So now, like I said, what I want to do with this image is create this kind of super high key negative space image where the entire background and everything is gone except for this detail down here in the rocks and the horizon and in them. So I'm going to start by grabbing a graduated filter, and we're going to go to a 4-stop dodge and whiten. So this is going to completely basically blow out any detail that's remaining in the sky. So we're just going to pull that down to there. Now I'm going to switch over to an adjustment brush and do the same thing, but we're going to do it with a little bit more kind of preciseness. I made up a word right there, preciseness. All right, so I'm going to drag this over the corners right here to kind of remove, I want to remove everything that's above the horizon line. All right, on the other side, I want to do the same thing with these clouds, and don't worry about getting it perfect right now because we're going to go through and we'll use our Alt or Option feature to be able to subtract out the areas that we don't want adjusted. So I'm just going to paint it in basically right now, and then we can go through and, I mean, we don't really need to go, I don't see any other detail above here. I hit O, by the way, to see the overlay. I'm not seeing a lot of detail up above that line, so if we want, we can paint up a little bit just to make sure that we're blowing out everything and it's going completely white. But I think we were pretty safe where we were. But let's just do it just for the heck of it, all right? We're just going to do it just to do it. And then as I get up here, I'm going to increase my brush size so we can go over it quicker. All right. Okay, so everything above the horizon line should be blown out now. I'm going to hit O to turn off that overlay. We're going to zoom in, hit Alt, and then we're going to make some fine-tuning adjustments just by bringing back the detail where we removed it, where we didn't want to remove it. So I'm just going to drag this right along the rocks. And guys, and like I mentioned, we actually recently did a workshop at Calumet. It was a free workshop. We saw a lot of you guys there. There's a really good amount of attendance, and so we're really happy about that. But when I was talking, I was basically telling you guys how I use my mouse for essentially everything, and I gave you guys a little tip. I want to tell you guys exactly which mouse I'm using because I use pretty much gaming everything for editing. For my laptop, it's a gaming laptop. For my mouse, it's a gaming mouse. not because I'm a big gamer. I do enjoy gaming every now and then, but it's actually because of the options and flexibility that these things give you. Gaming stuff is gives you just tons of options and customizing everything, from button functions to resolution to everything, to adding additional hardware in your laptop. So that's kind of what I stick with, is all gaming stuff. So my mouse is actually a Logitech G500. It's a gaming mouse. Oops, I didn't want to subtract that out of there. It's a G500 gaming mouse, and the reason why I got it is because it has a really high pixel resolution, so it's a very smooth mouse to begin with, and also it allows you to basically add additional weight. It comes with weights, and so you can add up to, I think, 500 grams of additional weight into the mouse, and basically it gives it some weight, it makes it really heavy, and it gives you really smooth movements. So I like it a lot. If you guys are looking for a mouse for editing, I recommend this mouse. It also has a ton of extra buttons you guys can customize to do whatever you want. Now the last thing I want to do this image, I like what we've done so far. By the way, if you guys don't have the Lightroom 4 preset system with the brushes, again, just remember you can pause the video, dial in the brush settings, and just follow along. All right, I probably said that too late, but that's all right. So the last thing I want to do this image is just adjust my crop, and I want to switch this to a little bit more unique crop, mainly because I think this image would look really cool as kind of a square canvas next to other canvases kind of in this shoot, kind of following all that same, you know, color toning and this black and white fade kind of look. So I really dig this square crop in this shot. It kind of adds a lot to the negative space in this image. So I like it a lot. All right, and another thing that, this is kind of one tip that I heard from another professional photographer once. He said that a lot of times he chooses square crops or just unconventional crops simply because it basically makes the client have to go through professional printing to be able to get that image. So, and it kind of sounds shady, but it's really not. If we choose these kind of crops, it not only makes our images look unique, but in order for the clients to get good results, most likely they're typical, you know, going to Walgreens or going wherever they want to print these images, they're not gonna be able to print these unique crops very well. And so they come back to the studio. You know, it's another chance to be able to kind of get them to purchase prints and that kind of stuff. Don't use it in a shady way, guys, but use it in a nice way. Use it to beef up and enhance your images, and then hopefully you'll get some extra prints from it out as well. Anyway, so I like that tip. Just thought I'd share it with you guys. We're done with our image now, guys. I'm going to hit backslash so you guys can see the before. Here's the before image. Here's the after. We have this really cool faded negative space look to this shot, and I'm kind of digging it. Hopefully you guys like this effect as well. And we're done with our Lightroom editing. Now at this point, I'm going to pull up my little recording dialog box. It pops back up right here, and what we would do basically is hit stop. Now I'm not going to hit stop yet because I want to explain what it's going to do real quick. Once we hit stop, it's going to basically bring up our recording, and we can choose a couple different actions as far as what we want to do. If we are dissatisfied with our recording at any point, now I like this recording, we've done a good job with it, so I would not hit delete. But if you hit delete, it'll automatically delete whatever you recorded and prep you to basically start recording again. So rather than hitting stop and then delete and go on, you know, you can just hit delete if you mess up, and it'll restart everything from the beginning. So that way it's a little bit quicker than having to hit stop and then delete it manually later. So at this point, guys, I'm going to hit stop, and I've said this point a lot, which means I've said it too much. So let's go on and let's hit stop, and then I'm going to show you guys exactly what it's going to do after that in the next tutorial, where we go through the saving out and editing of this tutorial. All right, so I've brought up Camtasia 7, the recorder, so that because previously we were using Camtasia 8, we can't have the same version of recorder open at the same time. So I'm going to use Camtasia 7 to record this process. I was going to put this in the next tutorial, but I feel like it makes more sense just to show you guys in this same tutorial how to save it out, and then we'll go to the editing portion in the next tutorial. So I'm going to minimize this now because we don't need this screen right here. So let's minimize that. And now we've just hit stop, and this is the screen that it brings up. It's basically showing us a preview. Now this little dialog right here is actually the dialog over our video itself, and you can scrub it back and forth throughout the video. You can play it just to see where everything's at. You can make sure you did everything you wanted in this video, and then at this point you're going to choose a couple different options. What you could do from here is you could produce it and finish the video without doing any editing and save it into a video format that you can share. But we need to do some editing to this image, or not to this image, to this video. So we have a couple different options. Once again, we can delete from here, but if you wanted to delete and re-record, I'd recommend doing it in that previous dialog that we showed you. That way it saves you a step of having to go here and delete it from this point. So with saving, we have two options. One is to click save and edit, and what it's going to do is you're going to save it to a location. It's going to automatically bring up Camtasia Studio to begin editing. I don't typically do that because a lot of times I want to actually save it and then edit it at a later point in time, or maybe record multiple versions and then edit them all together. So what I do is click on this little arrow and click Save As. This will allow me to save out the video without bringing up Camtasia Studio and loading up the file automatically. So I'm going to choose my location. I have this little project work in process drive, or this folder on my work in process drive. And we're going to put it under author training, and I'm going to save it as a new folder. We previously went through a writing training. So this one is going to be Camtasia recording and editing series. We're going to go into here, and this is video number 1, which is recording a, let's see, well, let's just go recording a Camtasia screen capture. That's great. Usually with the file name itself, I don't actually change it typically, because most of my projects only have 1 or 2 videos regardless, and so there's not a big deal. I'm not super anal about that side. I like to have the folders organized, but with the actual clips themselves, I just do 1, 2, 3, so on, in chronological order. All right, so at this point we have saved out the Camtasia screen capture, and now what we need to do is go through and actually edit it. And for that, we're gonna go into the next tutorial. So at this point, I'm gonna hit stop. I'm gonna do the same thing, save out this last piece, and then we're gonna bring them both into that Camtasia edit and show you guys how we do that in Camtasia Studio. Great job, guys, and let's go on to the next part of this tutorial.